I'm delighted to welcome a friend and a colleague and someone whose insights I turn to for continuing my own education about DAM. Elspeth Cowell is the head of digital media at the Canadian Centre for Architecture, and I'm delighted with the presentation that she's put together for us. Elspeth, thanks so much. Welcome. It's good to see you as always, and over to you. And I'll be back to monitor the questions and ask you a few at the end.
Thank you, David. First, a quick introduction to the CCA for those of you who don't know us. The Canadian Centre for Architecture is both a museum and research centre. We are international in scope with a range of activities, both in Montreal and elsewhere in the world. We are a mid-sized institution with a large collection, including over 200 architectural archives, prints and drawings, photos, as well as a library. We consider architecture from diverse perspectives with an aim to represent more thoroughly the complexity and multifaceted reality of the architectural field and discourse. We chart urgent questions to engage with issues of our time, reframe the links between architectural thought and practice, encourage critical reflection and historical perspective, and generating new interpretations. As would be expected, the implementation of the CCA's DAM has clearly improved the management and distribution of our digital assets, but this will not be the focus of my presentation today. I will rather be looking at some interesting side effects of our DAMs, specifically how it is beginning to enable us to improve certain processes and to embark on new digital projects which enhance our user engagement. I do not have all the answers. Much of what I will talk about here is under development and works in progress, but I hope that some of these ideas will help you to see the powers of the DAMs as a tool of innovation beyond the DAMs itself, that this can be achieved with limited resources in a creative, forward-thinking, agile way. I should also note that I'm talking primarily about image digital assets today, as this is the most advanced part of our DAMs use. My talk will have two parts. I will first talk about two elements that are the foundation of our use of the DAMs as a tool for innovation. The DAMs in the context of the changing internal digital landscape at the CCA. And second, the forward-thinking, agile, and creative approach we use to support these changes. In the second part, I will talk about three cases where we applied this approach: the updating of digital assets, in starting AI initiatives, and preparing for our new website, each of which gives a different perspective to the powers of the DAMs. The CCA's DAM vision is clear. I'd be very happy if we succeed in achieving the first 2 points you can see here, with a full integration of a DAM with all our assets and processes in place. We're actually still working towards this. We are currently working in a hybrid mode of implementation and operation. Excuse me, I have a cat on my desk. My apologies. I would be happy if we succeeded in achieving the first 2 points you see here. We're a fully integrated DAM with all our assets and process in place. We're actually still working towards this. We're currently working in a hybrid mode of implementation operation, where some processes are fully integrated while others are still in old systems. We are still reviewing and ingesting assets. One of the reasons for the state of development is digital asset management. The CCA is part of and supporting the fourth point on the slide, the advancement of CCA's digital ambitions. I don't generally have the option to say no, that we should not embark on a new digital project until all the assets are integrated in and the DAMs is fully operational, although sometimes I try. In fact, the digital ambitions you will see sometimes pull me away from the DAMs development work. As is the case everywhere, the digital landscape has been evolving at the CCA over a number of years. Until 2017, it was scattered across the institution with often unclear direction. The creation of the digital division in 2017 brought focus to the enterprise and has progressively moved digital technology from a supporting role to a curatorial one. This is reinforced by the increasing importance of our digital outputs alongside physical outputs such as books and exhibition. For instance, we have been producing a 3-part documentary film series that examines the ways in which changing societies and new economic pressures are affecting the homes of various communities. The first 2 parts of this have been released. The third is coming out later this year. The central role of our website as a publishing platform and a critical access point helps expand our reach globally, has also contributed to this digital focus. One of our long-term goals is a digital CCA that understands digital technology as a way to expand reach, and access, and to produce new knowledge. This goal is supported by a desire to explore new digital pathways, which where the integration of the dams, the tool for advancing digital innovation, is central. How do we achieve these ambitious goals? In saying that we are forward-thinking, agile, and creative sounds like we have been immersed in courses in project management and design thinking, and we are applying theory from those two domains. In reality, this approach is much more concrete than that. We are forward-thinking, agile, and creative by necessity. We are a small digital team for the dams. There is me, and it's only part of my job, a coordinator responsible for day-to-day digital asset management and image workflows, plus 2 temporary staff working on asset ingest. We're supported by a small and very busy internal IT team, yet we have big ambitions and many projects. But what we lack in resources and tools, we try to make up for in ingenuity. We learn on the fly. Being small means we are all hands-on. While this is sometimes a challenge in terms of workload, it means that we see the problems, know the mechanics of how our systems work, and can find creative solutions quickly. We are also very aware of the projects and the needs of the rest of the digital team and can see the opportunity to support their work. Now for some practical cases where we have applied this approach. In this first case, working with the dams has helped solve a problem. Since the inception of digital photography at the CCA, we have focused on increasing the amount of collection digitized, imaging objects as much as possible only once at a quality that's usable for most applications. However, rapid changes in digital technology have meant that the expectations for the quality of images has increased, and this means we need to pay more close attention to the life cycle of our images. Many of our early digital images have decreased utility, perhaps acceptable for a small web image, but not for print purposes for instance. The technical metadata has always been available embedded in the image files, but in a situation that is surely very familiar to many of you, prior to the dams, our digital images were stored in folders on servers. This organization made it very difficult to assess the technical metadata for image age and quality across the images. Enter the dams. The range of technical metadata fields for embedded image data in the dams is pretty typical. Data file is created, resolution, image dimensions, color space, bit depth, and capture equipment. Interestingly, it is this last one that you will see in a moment is proved to be particularly useful. As we embark on our ingest process, I've started downloading spreadsheets of all the metadata to be verified in the ingest process. I quickly realized, in addition to using these spreadsheets to assess issues in descriptive metadata, with some data manipulation and filtering in Excel, I could use the technical metadata to assess the quality of thousands of images quickly. I also tested doing this in OpenRefine, but ultimately found Excel has the advantage of quick graphing. Here's the results of the portion of the collection images, all of the images in our photo collection that I've assessed in detail to date. The first graph shows the volume of images produced by various photographic and scanning equipment we have used over time. The second is a quality assessment based on a point system related to our current image status. 1 point assigned to the resolution is 300 ppi or greater, 1 for the longest dimension being 3000 or above, 1 point for it having RGB color space as opposed to being uncalibrated or no information present. So any image with 3 points meets or exceeds minimal image, and 1 and 2 less so. There's images with 0, but they're statistically small, so I have not included them. You will quickly see the correlation between the equipment and quality. Images taken on the D1X and 2X cameras, which we were earliest prior to 2012, are likely to be 1 or 2 point. Between 2012 and 2015, when most D700 camera images are 2 to 3 point, and everything after 2015, they tend to be 3 point. This graph brings together the quality point system and the equipment that enables you to see more easily close correlation between the two. The names on the bubbles are the various cameras, the scanners we've used. The methodology I use for this process has its flaws. There are images that are good quality, but for some reason, because the object is small, they don't seem to meet standards. You'll see one on here from our Super Scan, which is our latest equipment, which appears to be a 2, but it's probably just a small image. It also doesn't address the need to look at the visual evaluation of images and ensure their usability. But the process is a shorthand way to initiate better control of image lifecycle and determine what we need to replace soon. Ultimately, I think the most useful aspect in this analysis is knowing the capture equipment, as it can be easily correlated to the image date and can be used to establish where images will likely no longer meet current standards based on equipment capacity and specification. I've listed the cameras by date and as well as scanners we've recently used. The analysis of our digital assets based on equipment further enables the view of images to see where variant equipment is used. I listed these here as anomalies, things that are not a standard part of our image department inventory. But I've also seen even worse than what you see here. I recently found a iPhone 6 photo in our dams. And some of these may actually be good quality images that come from external photographers. Additionally, the lack of capture equipment at all in the metadata is a red flag. All of this analysis is only possible through the manipulation of metadata mediated through our dams. Different from the previous case, this case shows how doing something without the support of dams proves how helpful the dams could have been. The value of the dam as a tool to this project is going to seem self-evident after I explain the project and process, but this certainly was not true when we started working on it. This was an opportunist pandemic project, which gave us a chance to begin experimenting with AI. We were approached in 2021 by a researcher from Princeton University with an interest how the presence of trees in architectural drawings demonstrates important conceptual shifts in architectural thinking. They had a grant and students to support the project, and we had the drawings. The idea is that we could use machine learning to find trees in drawings that are clearly not something you normally indicate systematically in cataloging them. You're probably thinking that it would be an easy machine learning project, as surely existing image recognition technology can find trees. But as we discovered quickly, this is true for photographs, but not for architectural drawings. As this drawing, the drawings on this slide demonstrate, the range of representation of trees on drawings is broad, as is the scale in which they are depicted. Everybody working on the project was new to machine learning. We dove in with limited resources and learned as we went. It was a perfect example, as anyone who has embarked on a machine learning project learns, that getting the machines to find something requires a lot of human labor at first. As shown on this slide, we need to annotate many drawings with the location of trees so the algorithms could be trained to find them. But first, we needed to find the drawings with the trees to annotate. I will happily talk about the AI aspects of this project in more detail, but today we're here to talk about the potential role of the dams in it. So let me tell you about the process. When we started this project, our images of drawings were not yet in the dams. We needed to transfer images to cloud storage so the students working on the project to annotate them using an online annotation system. The amount of drawings we found was modest by AI standards, just about 1,500. To find images with trees, we could either start based on cataloging metadata and search for drawings likely to contain trees, such as landscape plans in the collection management system, or browse through images on the server and make more random discoveries of drawings and trees, then find the cataloging metadata with the file name. Either way, it was time-consuming and cumbersome. It would be difficult to track it was difficult to track what you're looking for and required creating tracking documents and duplicating images outside the system in the process. It was immediately clear as we struggled with this how the dams could have helped by bringing together the metadata. Collection management system descriptor data is synced with the dams via an API and the files in one place. It would have enabled collaboration by allowing effective grouping of images as the drawings with trees were located. This tracking could have followed through the whole project by tagging and grouping of images at each stage, as well as downloading images and metadata in a coherent package for the AI work. The results could have been managed in the dam, where we have the flexibility to add project-based metadata fields. Our AI projects will continue hopefully next time with all the assets ingested into the dams as part, and that it can be used as part of the project infrastructure. Our new website. I was reluctant to include the future CCA website in my discussion today. It's currently only a concept. The portion particularly relevant to digital assets is on this slide, but it's difficult to talk about our changing digital landscape without it. We have known for several years that our current website is reaching end of life, and that a new one would be needed to be developed. Among other considerations, our current collection online no longer meets our needs or expectations, but for various reasons, this project is only now moving forward in earnest. Consequently, there is many unknowns in terms of strategy and needs and technology. This was a particular challenge as we developed the dams. I will restrict myself here to some general observations about how the dams development we are thinking about, how the dams development we are thinking about the not yet developed website. Hopefully down the road, I'll be able to tell you in more detail about the outcomes of this interaction. First, simply having a DAMs to an API capacity is an important step. We remember before our current DAMs was implemented, we really had no DAMs at all. Second, as I discussed in the first case today, we are thinking more critically about image quality. One of the ways our collection online is outdated is that we took an approach that any image is better than no image. So in addition to older professional images, there are snapshots, non-professional images presented. Our capacity to do high quality images along the expectations of images shifted. So managing image lifecycle and low quality image replacement is a critical function of the DAMs. Third, our collection online only allows for one image per object, yet our archival collections are full of multiple page documents, models, and other objects with multiple images that we'll want to display on the future website. So we have made sure that the metadata options facilitate this, and we're not just depending on image numbering in file names to sequence them. Fourth, while I'm talking mostly about collection digital assets today, our DAMs also manages non-collection ones for events, exhibitions, and people. Prior to the DAMs, the only metadata associated with them was cryptic file and folder names. Now all the information you need to use and caption them is in the DAMs. Lastly, in anticipation of linking to projects and concepts and ideas on the future website, we have implemented tagging capacities that reflect our project and research-driven approach. I have presented this at a previous Henry Stewart event, and you can find that video on YouTube. I will conclude here by giving a few last thoughts about where I hope each of these three cases is going down the road. We will evolve my initial attempts at an image lifecycle management into a systematic process for image replacement. The use of the DAMs in AI projects will support using AI both in research projects as well as metadata enhancement projects for access within the DAMs. The DAMs will be integrated in the website ecosystem, enhancing the access to the rich CCA collections and content. Developed through our forward-thinking, agile, creative approach, the integration of the DAMs as a tool for innovation has proven critical to developing better workflows and enhancing user experience on our digital projects. Thank you. I'm happy to talk about any part of this in more detail.
Elspeth, thanks so much. The first comment that came in is never apologize for a cat.
Yes. He was sound asleep when I started.
Exactly. And it came in from a fellow Canadian and was upvoted many, many times. So we did have some non-feline questions come in.
Oh, good.
One of which is, what role do the image photographers play with regard to direct interaction with the DAM, if any? How do they? I'll leave it general like that.
This is an evolving thing. We are now integrated completely our event and exhibition photography into the DAM. So in fact, our photographer directly uploads that. We're quite open about this because we rely on our photographer to do work to a good standard. So it actually just goes straight live. This also means because of social media and things like this, people are able to get images out of the DAMs quickly, because this also means that we don't end up with photos. Somebody wants it for social media, we put it on the server and it ends up on the server. It means we can get things into the DAM quickly. Ultimately, this will also be true for collection images. We will actually have our digitization technician or our photographer directly uploading into the DAM, as opposed to going through a mediation. This is going to, I know this is going to be complicated. This is actually one of our projects for this year, is integrating this process, and it is going to be complicated because there's so many different variables in how we manage images in relation to our collection management system and things like this. So, but it's going to be an interesting challenge.
No doubt. We had another question come in asking, because you mentioned in the introduction to CCA that you have architectural models it's part of what's housed at CCA.
Yeah.
And the question was, is there special photography for dimensional objects that you're using to capture?
We generally have historically, and I think it's still the case, photographed our models primarily for access purposes or publication purposes. We have not really evolved a very systematic, oh, you always take all four, sides of the model, you take a top view. We tend to look at it a bit more on case by case, because also the range of our architectural models is huge, from very formal presentation models to two pieces of cardboard connected together. So we tend to look at each one specifically. It's something I've actually been thinking about, is about how can we make sure that we have a certain level of documentation for all our models. I will also say we don't photograph our models all that much. It's incredibly time consuming to photograph architectural models. And when we have other demands, we do it on demand essentially. And also they're just moving them out of storage, having a conservator look at them, make sure they're in good enough shape to photograph it's quite a process. I've always had a dream that we'd open every crate of a model, get it out and photograph it, but I don't think it will ever happen.
Yeah, let us know when that dream is realized. We'll, that might not just be check back next year. So
yeah, no, it's definitely not check back next year.
And another question that came in was asked about, do you have documents linked to, if we hypothesize that a primary object was a model, are there documents linked to that can be traversed through the DAM system? And maybe the model isn't a great example to key the question, but the question is more about asset linking and that path to discovery.
We have many, because our collection is kind of segmented in a degree between our architectural archives, our prints and drawings, and our photos. Each collection kind of has a different way of approaching it. For instance, photo albums, we relate all the parts of the photo album within our DAM, so all the assets are uploaded, and then you can, if you land on one asset for a photo album, you can immediately jump to all the assets for that photo album. Architectural archives are slightly different, where we actually kind of are replicating a certain level of the structure of the architectural archives within the DAM, so that because our architectural archives are generally organized by project, that you could go to a specific project within an architect's archive and find all the images there. You could also find them by searching, obviously. So we actually have, our philosophy in the DAM is both that you can find things by searching, or that you can find them by some other means of organization. So.
A question came in from, it said, we're a small university museum and gallery. Do you have some observations you can share to help justify the costs and the labor of integrating DAM with other systems, including CMS?
Oh, that's really easy. Consistency of information. I mean, if we had to transfer the information from our collection management system into our DAM, it would never remain the same. It would keep, because we actually have it so it live updates, well, more or less live updates, so that if you change a title in the collection management system, it changed in the DAM. If we didn't have that, and the whole AI project and working with using the DAM in relation to AI is premised on this, because it means image, title are always together in the DAM and coherent. There's other challenge. There's the metadata you want the same in both places, but I think it's also important to think about how you use different metadata in different places. One of the things we've been talking about is, as we're kind of talking about tagging our collection more, we've actually talked about doing that based on the images in the DAM, because it's kind of, there's a bit more flexibility in the way we work in the DAM, and it can allow us to experiment. It's an interesting thing I've kind of learned as we've gone along, is that the DAM in some cases is an easier place to experiment than the collection management system.
Yeah, I really valued what Robert Carswell said from the Fine Arts Museum in San Francisco about having a place to test and play.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that we have to give counsel on all the time about, when an executive comes back and says, I saw the coolest AI presentation.
Yes.
just go do AI.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And
we have to have standards, but we also need to have flexibility.
Yes, and I think the space and the recognition with software like this, that is part of the institutional firmament, it is part of the institutional foundation. And sometimes even foundational technology like this, we need room to experiment, to see, well, do we build out another room with that? And
also, because we all have a huge range of assets, and you can't, one size doesn't fit all, and we may not also know, what does fit. There's somebody comes along, I can just, one that's come up, and I actually have no answer to this yet. It's a long way down my list. It's all those recordings we've done of Zoom meetings. over the
Interesting.
pandemic and
Yeah.
beyond. I mean, which
Mm-hmm.
are sitting on the server. Some of them are temporal, some of them have no longevity, but some of them
Mm-hmm.
are actually very useful documents that you also might want to give access to internally. Do we put them in the dams? Do we not? If we do, who's the creator? They don't have a creator in the same way. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a space where we can start thinking about just the whole broad range of kind of
Mm-hmm.
things that we need to document and track. And yeah, we have to approach each one slightly differently and set our priorities.
Well, segueing slightly off of Zoomcades and Zoom,
Yeah,
Zoom as asset, slightly terrifying thought.
it is
Um,
terrifying.
we had a question come in about what other asset types do you see as growing on your horizon in oral history and interviews with professionals or video or
that's the other project for this year, is we are about to
Mhm,
start embarking on ingesting our audio video assets. And that
mhm,
is a broad range from when we used to just simply put a camera up in our theater and just record every lecture, and this just a raw piece of footage, to
mhm,
now we're actually producing films. So we not only have the films, but the subtitles. We have the film in multiple languages. We have
mhm,
stills, thinking about how, and it's going back to how everything we do is kind of project driven in, especially for that kind of asset. So how do
mhm,
we interrelate those? How do we manage those? So I think that's one large area I see upcoming, is the kind of audio video and how we handle it, which is fascinating, is a different fascinating challenge to images, because images, our problem is we just have so many.
mhm,
Audio video, we don't have as many, they're bigger, but we also have kind of more of a thinking about which we keep.
mhm. There's a which, and then there's a which, then there's the rights clearances, the use cases.
Yeah,
There's some
yeah,
there's some absolutely exquisite projects going on
yeah.
around in oral history and the uses of oral history with contemporary technologies
Yeah,
that
and
can.
just retracking all of that, because of course when we do fair number of oral histories, and yeah, you'll find those, the files are on the server, but then you need to track back to where is the agreement, was the agreement embedded in some other contract, and how do we track all that, and how much of that documentation ends up in the dam? Do we attach the contract? Do we just put the information in? Yeah, it's another, we've talked about rights earlier today, it's another rights
Mhm, mhm.
question for sure.
Yeah, rights, and also metadata tools that help to elicit what's the meaning in those interviews. There's
Yes, yeah.
there's a lovely example of this with the Studs Terkel Archive in Chicago that Alison Schweib manages, and it's amazing what they've done, where they have the rights, because they have the interviews, some of which they have the rights, they digitize them, and they use this extensively in the school system in Chicago for students who are writing papers about the topical area that Studs Terkel interviewed so many people on. And really fascinating oral history project.
There's a big AI case study here too, that is something
Yeah,
else.
sitting around.
Yeah.
So a fun question to end with and to thank you with. If I were to visit the museum store at CCA, what would be there?
Our museum store is primarily a bookstore.
Mhm.
Well, our signature item, in addition to books, are bags. We
Okay.
produce a new CCA tote bag every year, and it's a long discussion about the colors. This year is
Mhm.
white on white. So
Okay.
we have a small number of architectural toys.
Mhm.
We have a good selection of children's book and architecture, but we're probably one of the remaining architectural bookstores. They've mostly gone online. You can still walk in ours and stand there and browse through books and take home more than you should.
Well, Elspeth, on that note, and on a fun note about thinking about, well, that'd be a good place to do some gift shopping. Thank you so much for your contributions to the field and for a very interesting blend of looking at data to help data drive direction and development. You've got such a good knack for that. And I know these are valuable insights you've shared. Thank you. We appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
Mhm. I always like to end our time together with playing around a little bit with the alphabet. So I'm going to state, dear asset manager, we're going long and meaningfully focused on real and truly highly energized, fascinating, unfolding the universal reach of engagement. And if you take the first letter from all those words, it says, damn, glam for the future. And I hope that's much of what we've accomplished today. The recordings for this session are accessible on the agenda tab. We'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback on your event experience. Please take a minute to let us know in the post-event survey. The link is accessible via the community tab. We're very excited about our in-person events coming up next month in March in Los Angeles, in June in London, and in New York in September, and our live events in creative operations, photography, and some other areas that are so close to digital asset management. I'd like to end where we began today, where we started. In last Sunday's Washington Post in the travel section, and yes, I'm holding up an actual newspaper. In the travel section, there was a wonderful story about the Enchroma glasses, which allow for someone who's colorblind to see museums, and that's what the story is about, in a remarkable new way. And there's some great videos about people trying these for the first time. It was in the travel section. And if we join together the far reach of what we do, of how we bring so many people to our museums and libraries and archives and other centers, I thought this was such a lovely tying together of the impact that we have, of curiosity and community, of inclusivity and connectivity. These are the words for our mantle. They are the words that we remember. This concludes the conference. Thank you for your time and your involvement in digital asset management and for attending this Henry Stewart event. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.